Hello everyone, welcome to our second webinar in the series of webinars about ArCADia BIM 14. Slight delay again, but we're getting much better at doing these, so it was much quicker to get it up and running today. Today we'll talk about the program settings from the options window, as you can see. We're going to talk about the project manager, which is extremely important in this program. We'll talk about creating buildings, levels. We'll give you an overview of the 3D view and the 3D CAD view, the cross-section, axonometry and extensions, the level of details, and so forth. I'll ask you again to please not ask questions while we're doing this. You can type them in again, and then I'll try to answer your questions at the end when we finish this presentation and the webinar. So I think we can get going. Let's see. All right, let's get going. Today we will discuss the project manager window, which is very important when it comes not only to project management, but also for creating buildings and creating levels. I want to remind you that at an earlier webinar, we talked about the differences between the different versions of the software, namely ArCADia, ArCADia LT, and ArCADia Plus. We talked about the demo version and uploading licenses, as well as about additional libraries that we need to install after downloading and starting the program. I encourage you to watch that webinar so that you'll have all this information. As I already mentioned, we will talk about the project manager. So, what is the project manager? This is a window which, when you start the program, is one of the open windows. Probably most of you close it immediately after you've opened it. So let's underline the fact that it is very important. It does not have to be open all the time, but it would be good for you to know where to activate it, because it manages what is in the drawing. It tells us what can be turned on, off, and blocked. Here we create levels. Here we create buildings. We switch between them, so it is very important, a very important window. It also manages the views in the program. If you accidentally close the project manager, first, on the vertical toolbar on the left, the first icon from the top is turning the project manager on and off. In addition, you can find an icon to turn on this window on the Manage ribbon. It is also the first icon, if someone uses other templates. I also talked about templates in the last webinar. The project manager badge may appear still to be on the System ribbon. Also, please remember about the left edge at the top of the screen, or the Manage ribbon, or the System. When the project manager is an empty document, I mean a document that you have not done anything in yet, please note that it is empty. There is nothing in it. There is only one tab on the right side. If there is actually an empty document, you have not drawn on it yet, and you have not opened any CAD project. Well, it will be only one layer here, a 0 layer, which is in the program when you would open any CAD file. For example, you will outline, or this is a map with different layers. This tab will show all the layers available in the project. You can turn them on. To turn it on and off, we have this bulb. To block or unblock it with the padlock, you can turn on and off printing with this blue printer. And of course, coloring a given layer. You cannot add or remove layers in this window. It is only a change of visibility, or, for example, blocking a layer. When we start drawing, for example, we start by clicking a plus in the upper right corner. Here we have something like Insert View. If we start from inserting the view and we enter it either at the point 00 or in any place where we click, because we have a drawing in the area. While working, the project manager is filled automatically, including buildings, levels, and additional views. The moment you insert a view, this view can be visible immediately, and it will automatically switch to view 1. Generally, in ArCADia, we draw on the view called view 1, view 2. The point is that it should be a view. You will still have such views as cross-sections, axonometries, extensions, profiles, depending on the industry in which you operate and what licenses you have. You can always have a 3D view and also the CAD 3D view. This is the view you're looking at, the drawing from above. The 3D CAD view is here in the project. A bit smaller, this 3D CAD view is shown. Note that the project manager on the right already looks a bit different than the one in the blank document. We have a cross-section, we have a 3D view, like in the other project, but we also have the CAD 3D. And now, how do you switch between views? By simply clicking on a given tab in the project manager on the right. When you have CAD 3D and standard program settings, when you are switching between the 3D view and the views will be changing automatically. So when I switch to the view, I center the entire drawing from the top. However, if I switch to CAD 3D, the view changes. But remember that we can change the view because now we have quite a lot of information and maybe there's too much and we cannot see too much, but you can hide some of this information. You can draw such a project in a mesh view, but remember that you're drawing on a view anyway. You can have all the other views included. You can introduce modifications based on the element properties. Enter the element properties. You can, for example, dimension, but you can draw only on the view. And now, when you've added the view, you only have the terrain. In ArCADia, you can only draw in the building or on the terrain. It means in a building, of course, it is the entire architecture and internal installations, which you will draw on one level at a time. My point is, only one level can be active at a time. At the moment, when you define the next level, the project manager switches to it, and then this level will become active, and the previous one will still be visible if we don't do anything about it. But it is not active. I will now switch back to the project for a moment. How do I add a building now? Of course, you could insert any element of the system just related to the building, such as water supply systems or even walls. But you can also, as you can see right here, there is an icon with adding a building, and you can introduce a building here. To switch to it, it immediately moves in with the default level. Double-click to switch to a different level. If you want to switch to terrain, double-click. As you can see, what is active now is in bold. And please do not look at the blue highlighting. It is only the highlighting of the element, but it is not active in the drawing that we are working on. As you can see, I can change the position of the blue highlight, but only level 0 is active. There is also a yellow icon in front of it. This is marked when you will draw here. And now, when you introduce anything, for example, I'll introduce a wall, it is drawn both on the view and in the 3D view. If you have new views introduced, this wall will also be introduced. And now some information. The more views, the wall must of course be drawn on each of those views, which means it may take a little bit longer. I will now switch back to the project for a moment, on which we already have several views. What I'll do now is I'll insert a cross-section view. I want to show you the difference between the active and the inactive views. So we're going to insert it here. It just takes a little bit of time. If something is active, you can of course select it first, but it is shown in a brighter color because it is marked in white. When anything is inactive, the color in which it was drawn will be dimmed, as you see here. And now, when you see, for example, a 3D CAD view, it is introduced, but here, when it comes to trees, there's quite a lot of information, and there are quite a lot of lines. I have a simplified view of these trees. We have this because otherwise it would be a very large number of lines. This is also visible in the case of, for example, doors, as you see here. That there is a bit more of this information, because let's face it, in 3D, the information about where the handle is and needs to be drawn is not needed. On the view, although we only have the views turned on, the 3D CAD view will also be there. So if you have additional information, we we can get rid of it or remove it by deleting the view. So you click on one view and with the mouse right-click and choose Delete. Or we switch to a given view and just turn off all the light bulbs. But of course, remember that if you turn off these light bulbs, the program sends this information to this view anyway. So at some point, it will slow down your work anyway. When it comes to slightly lower spec and older computers, or those that do not have too much memory, I would even suggest that you insert the 3D view when you need it, and do not work on it from the very beginning. So how do you insert views? It depends a bit on the view. The view from the projection view, as you have seen, can be inserted just through the view handle, which is here on the left. As for the cross-section, I have already showed you how that works. Axonometry is simply and only by clicking. The same for the 3D CAD view, but only by clicking, except that in the 3D CAD view, I suggest that this 3D CAD view be inserted as I am showing you. I do not know if it will be visible, and I will get closer. It should be placed in the same place as on the view. So I will change the background color so that it will become more visible and you can see how that's going to work. We're doing it here. We changed in the color scheme. Go to the white and there we go. It's all visible now. So as you can see, a little bit under the 3D CAD, it is gray because they overlap. Otherwise, the view on this three-dimensional model in the CAD space will not coincide and it will disturb you while drawing. So also pay attention to that. The 3D CAD view should be covered with at least one of the views. You can insert any number of views because at the beginning you draw the building, that is, as it is actually one level above the other or under the other. However, if you want to print it later, you want to show each floor next to each other or below each other. Of course, you can add each next view and you switch to it in a different level. What you can see on the given level, I will show it in this view, but I will delete this 3D CAD view first. Please note now, I now have only a given level turned on, which is the project manager in the projection view. When I turn on the attic, which is level 3 here, you can already see that I have some grayed out elements there, both in terms of walls and equipment. So you can see now that I have only one level. However, in the 3D view, I have everything. I have all the floors, I have a roof, which means that I want to turn something off in the 3D view. What I'll have to do is I'll have to switch it to a different level via the tab or double click on the view. For cross sections, axonometry, profiles, extensions, this view handle is always in the lower left corner. It means that when I click this handle, I can activate this view. I don't have to switch between them on the tab. With a view, it's a bit different because the view can sometimes have this view handle, including the fact that it might be somewhere on the wall, so it's a bit more difficult to switch between them. Therefore, I suggest using tabs. As for the 3D view, you can simply click on it and the 3D view becomes the active one. So what does it give you? You can, for example, view the properties of a given element by selecting them. And here, from the Edit window, enter the properties. In this way, you can, for example, change the color of the roof, raise or lower the element. However, you do not move anything, you add nothing. You do it only on the view. But if you turn off something from the view, you do not expect that it will also be turned off in the 3D view, because those are separate trees, so to speak. Each view has a separate tree. If I delete something from the view, I delete it from all the views. But if I turn something off in the tree, it is only turned off in a given view. We often have questions that after some time when you open a project and there's something missing, for example, a 3D view or in a cross-section, and then it turns out that you just forgot that you turned it off earlier, you turned off a light bulb somewhere. So when there is, for example, the cross-section here, you unrolled it and turned off the light bulb. And then, of course, it will not be on the cross-section, and you wonder what happened to this element. So sometimes you just have to browse through all of these bulbs. When you want to turn something off, block it, use these yellow bulbs so that the light bulb turns blue. To lock something, use a padlock. And now there's no chance for me to select the walls on a given element. And here also printing and colors. And now when it comes to the colors, please pay attention to what we have here in the groups of elements. I will go back to this earlier project here, in which we only have one wall inserted. And only one wall appears in the manager. The moment I add the window here, please pay attention, the window and the lintels are added, and they insert automatically with your element, your window or door. And now, I don't add anything here. ArCADia does it automatically, and the elements automatically assign to the appropriate groups. We call them groups, and when you want to turn something off and on, of course, you turn off the whole group. But you can divide these groups, which I will show you in a moment on these projects that are already done. But here what I wanted to show are the colors for the group. If you change the colors for the group, the whole wall will change. If you haven't changed the pens, wall properties and settings, for example, for the hatching. I'll go back to another project. And here, as you can see, I have light blue selected for a group of walls. But blue is assigned to the outline of the walls as well as one of the wall layers. The moment you define in the wall that, for example, a pen is of a different color than on the view, here, for example, I will make it pink, then the colors that we assign to a given wall will no longer be taken into account. Only those elements that have not been changed will be colored here. So at this point, the line from the axis that I have just modified manually will not be changed together with the color for the group. When we have elements, it is sometimes a good idea to divide them into groups. As for walls, I usually divide them into external and internal into partition and load bearing. But you can divide them absolutely as you want to. It all depends on what you need. Here we have a larger project, and here, for example, the walls are divided a bit differently. The reason is that because the outer walls and inner walls have different thicknesses, so that they are divided, for example, by thickness and layers. Why is it done? To select the whole group with one click. To select a group, choose with the right mouse button, select elements, and you can then select all elements from a given group. You can enter the properties, you can change the whole group, not individual elements. I have a lot of walls here, so if I had to click them throughout the document, let's face it, it would not be convenient. So I select them all, and I can change, for example, font pens for descriptions, element properties, or even materials. Thanks to this division into groups, you can modify your projects faster. This applies not only to walls, it applies to, for example, rooms, where you can sort them into groups and later it will be reflected in the list. You can also do it in, for example, 3D objects. You can do it with windows, where we will put the windows in one group and balcony doors in another group. So such groups will help you in working on the project. So how do we add levels? You have already seen how to add buildings. When it comes to moving buildings, we move the building in any of the views, whether it is a cross-section or a level. You only move them using this handle. Remember that only one level is active at a time. For example, here only the copied elements are active on the cross-section, which means that those elements behind us will not be moved. If you select this view and move it, then a piece of the building will simply be moved and the piece will remain behind in the same place where it is. So please remember to move only by these handles. And bear in mind that each view has a separate handle. When it comes to buildings, you move them by selecting the building in the Project Manager window and either select the option to edit this building under the right button, or here, use the icons that are above the name of the building. When it comes to levels, when we already have one level, either under the right button or right here at the top of the dialog box, you have the option of inserting new levels above, below, deleting a level, or moving it higher or lower if you have inserted it incorrectly. Now, it is quite important that when we choose Add Level, of course it has information about the level, its height, the plan cut line, how the table from the room should look like, but the part that is not selected by default is quite important. So that by default, the program will copy items from the level we have selected here. If we want to copy anything, we go to Copy Selected Level Contents and select it there. And now, if we have several industries in a given project, absolutely all of them will be shown, but we can only use one. Or we can copy, for example, only walls. It is up to us to choose. If we do not want to copy anything, of course, the marked level will be created and we can draw it from scratch. We still have the levels visible by default, the one below, because the program automatically switches to the new level that was created. When you want to turn off or turn on a level that is underneath or interferes with your drawing, just click on this icon. It is quite important, especially if you have internal installations, water or heating, in which level of detail the project is drawn. In other words, when you introduce the views, they have their own properties. Let's go to the properties of such a view under the right mouse button. First off, you can change, of course, the name. If you're laying out the views one by one, then you can name them the ground floor, attic, foundations. Second, you have the option to refresh the view here. If you have a lot of views, some levels, some cross-sections, axonometry, and extensions, the program starts to run slower because each element to introduce has to be redrawn on each view. When you switch the refreshing in the view to manual, then the given view is not refreshed, so the program works faster. But then if you insert a pipe in the view, and you have set in axonometry that it does not refresh automatically, only manually, you have to see this tube to see it. Simply switch the given view, so it is better to draw a few elements and only refresh it, thanks to which the program will run faster. Now here, the drawing units, by default, ArCADia draws in centimeters, which means that whether you insert a wall at the very beginning, when drawing or inserting an electrical outlet, for example, a wall in the external sewage system, you draw it in centimeters, which means that if you are drawing external installations or networks, you should rather switch to meters. Take the view properties and switch to meters from centimeters, so that you do not have to enter data in centimeters when drawing in the terrain. There are also the scales of pens, fonts, and hatches. If you change them while working, for example, when part of the drawing is drawn, remember to use the redraw option. It means the drawing refresh option because all these elements must be redrawn again, those which have been already drawn, because that's how it will work for those elements that you will introduce. And what is very important, that in these views you have the level of detail on the right. As you will see here, I purposely approached the sinks, and when I have a water connection here, I have both the drain of this water and the tap. We see this element exactly as it will look. This means it is set on the average level of detail. So it may be that it will be a little bit simplified compared to the high level of detail, but it is better if you're just drawing the installations. Then it should be at a level of low detail, which will make the program run faster. It will take a while for me to recalculate this level of detail so that you can see that there will be symbols and pipes will be shown as lines only, so in such a way so as to give documentation to the government office, for example. However, if you will be drawing, for example, ventilation, it will be better to actually use this average level of detail because these elements already take up so much space that you need to know how much space they will actually occupy in a room, where is the wall, and where you can introduce them. So please note that if the program slows down a bit because you have a large project, just change the level of detail in the drawing. So from average to low. So now, look at this water supply element here. You can see the plumbing and the water connection. So it will work faster if you have either just a manual refresh of the views or the level of detail set to a lower than average or high. When you draw on the views, as I mentioned earlier, you of course have a 3D view. It is a separate view, so the view tree is independent of the view. Here you can of course also change the properties and levels of detail. But when it comes to the 3D view, it is also here in two versions. I will show it in the ArCADia System Options window, which can be found on the Manage ribbon. If someone will use a different template, this window will also be available on the System ribbon. On the right side, you have the options for individual modules. For example, you can set the parameters needed for the project, such as setting the standard, which lists various elements. On the left, you have the options to set the default font, which the program will be described with. Whether it will be drawn in centimeters or inches, the program is available all over the world, so imperial units are also used. Here, you also have the access to, amongst other things, the 3D view, to the settings of this 3D view. If someone has a slightly lower spec computer or a slightly older graphics card, the program, when starting it for the first time, will detect whether this card will allow you to display the rendering in real time, or whether you have to choose the simplified view. If the computer automatically finds that a card is too weak, it will simply switch to simplified view, and you will not have grass, clouds, and sun animations. You'll have no shadows, but you will have a 3D representation of your model, which all the elements you have entered will be seen, with textures, with transparency in windows, but the program will run faster thanks to this. If you have a good card, then of course I suggest that you use this advanced view, especially when it comes to architecture. When it comes to installations, this simplified view is good because it does not show shadows, and with pipes and such elements as cable wires, these shadows may obscure the image of your project. Also, if for example someone works and nevertheless the card has detected that this 3D view can be turned on, the advanced one, the programs run slower. And when drawing too much, it switches to the simplified view, because whenever you want to see what it looks like in real time, you'll be able to switch and to render. You switch here with this icon. This is the view, the 3D icon with arrows. It will allow you to switch at any time so as not to slow down your work with the program. There is also information about the 3D CAD view. The 3D CAD view, which I removed here from one of the projects. First of these two settings, it's that my view here in CAD was switching from view to isometric view. If you don't want to toggle, you can just turn off these two options. And if you don't want to just have this 3D CAD view by default, you turn it off this option. And I suggest that when it comes to installations or even architecture, I suggest turning them off at the beginning. And when you hand over the project to someone who does not have ArCADia and has a different CAD program, it would be good for him to receive information about the entire model, including the heights, so that he could read it by himself. He will not have this 3D view, as I have in the preview here, so he will only have what is in the drawing. And here, please note that if this 3D CAD view does not exist, it will only have a flat drawing, in which there will be a wall, but a block that will be drawn with one line. There will simply be no information about the element. So if you give the project to someone who does not have ArCADia, this 3D CAD view should be inserted by you, so that there will be no questions about at what height you have placed anything. When it comes to more advanced projects, where you have more than one industry, sometimes it happens that you have quite a lot of information in some places, and when you place it on top of each other, you just need space to insert something. Darkening this information, even if you only gray it out, then you'll have to gray out the group one by one. There's also the possibility of excluding the entire industry. Here in the Project Manager, you have something like this. This is also in all the views. Here you have the option to turn off an industry. For example, here I will turn off heating installations. I turn off the entire installation on a given floor, all elements. I do not have to select individual elements that I want to turn off, only the entire installation, so all radiators and all pipes. All elements are automatically turned off, and thanks to this, I have space on the project. I will definitely not move them or break them apart, but I will continue to have them still in the project. I do not have to remove them. And now you can see that the heating pipes have been turned off. By the way, when I went into the view properties, I didn't mention anything about the important option of transforming a drawing. I purposely did not discuss this at the beginning because when you get to a point that you hand over the project to someone who does not work in ArCADia system, there's no information about your elements, just the whole project is a reference to a block. And now, if this project is to be modified further, it would be a good idea to just flatten it. You save the new version, only the new flattened version, because otherwise you would delete all data about the walls, about the pipes, cables, about all elements. These parameters will, of course, be mapped on the view, and possibly the axonometry or the cross-section, if we leave it in. On the other hand, the 3D view will no longer be available, and it will not be possible to insert any other view. The flatten option is on the Manage ribbon, here under the Fix icon, and it does not flatten the document if we have 3D CAD inserted, but it deprives our project of any information about ArCADia. This means that it will be a mapping to a block, which if another user just breaks apart, he'll only have the lines. It will not spoil the project, even if you later come back to it and start drawing something again. It will be fine for you. It will not spoil it because you will simply have only a flattened drawing on which you will be drawing other elements from scratch. But sometimes it happens, and it happens very often, that for example, you have something on the cross-section that you do not like. You cannot remove it because it is probably some edge of a wall, which, if you remove it, it will also be removed from the project. And the same here. These two lines are solid. So at this point, I would like to delete it. But if I delete it, I will delete it from all views. And of course, I do not want to do this. In this case, I can just enter the properties of a given view and transform it into a drawing. It means that now it is only lines. If there are lines that I do not need, I can just delete them. I can also modify what I do not like. That is, for example, this extent of the hatching of the floor on the ground under the partition wall. So here, I only use the CAD elements. And what I remove does not affect the entire model. However, of course, if I change something on the model now, it will not be redrawn here in the cross-section. So remember that if you transform anything into a drawing, do it at the end, when, for example, you print and the model is ready, so that there is no such situation that we have something in this model and it will disappear from the cross-section because you forgot that you transformed it. And the last thing in the project manager, I have discussed the tabs on the right side, and I'll take a moment to tell you what we have on the left side. On the left side, you have a project tab. But if you want to insert an IFC underlay or an RVT underlay into the project, then here on the left, this underlay will have its tab. So here is the tree of the ArCADia system, and here the model will also be divided into levels, elements, just under the second tab. If you want to turn something on or off, you just need to switch to it and expand the tree and manage the relevant elements. That's it for now. Let me take this opportunity to invite you for the next webinar, where we'll discuss in a lot more detail the 3D view, which is quite important in ArCADia. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you for attending, and let's hope that it was meaningful in some ways for all of you. Let's have a look at the questions. Let's see, we have one here, which is from Sandeep, I see. If we create a group in one level, then will it get automatically applied to all levels? And the simple answer is yes. When you create groups, they will be available for whatever future level after the one where you defined it. They'll be available in all the levels. So next time you draw a wall on a new level, you can choose from what will be already there. The screen is blur. Okay, I think that should be okay in a second. Internet connections tend to do strange things, unfortunately, and we have little influence over that, but I hope it will clear up for you in a second. Maybe check your settings also, if it's on the higher level. There is a slight delay, I think, which could also be the reason for this. And I see Petros is here also from ArCADiasoft, I think. Nice to see you here. Great, Sandeep, thank you. Are there any other questions? We'll be answering a lot more and doing more of these webinars in the future. The next one will be at the same time. It might be a good idea to subscribe to the channel and put on notifications so that you'll be notified when the next one is on. It should be next Tuesday at the same time. And let's see, Arthur is doing something here. Hold on, let me check. Okay, I just had to turn it on here in my computer. So let me just find out if you mean from the left side, Arthur, because adding a section is from the top right-hand side of the mouse here. So if I'm clicking it here, right, you have insert view, insert 3D CAD view, and insert cross-section. I am not from the left. On the left, you only get the underlays here visible from RVT and IFC. Maybe if you can expand your question a little bit more. And Sandeep, you can only make changes on one level at a time. So it will apply to the level on which you're working. if that makes sense. The colors will not change, for example, in all the levels if you change it in one. Okay, and Arthur, you've written here, why is the open new existing file not in the architecture ribbon menu? Well, the architecture menu is only one of the many industry modules that we have. And if you look on top here, architecture, right? It's just one of all of these other ones here. So it will not have everything within one. We sort of have all the other options available for all the modules. So it will not be included only in the one, right? The options of opening and printing and all that, those are options of ArCADia, and ArCADia LT and ArCADia Plus. These are the base module options for everything, right? Okay, Sandeep. So the name of the group goes to all the levels. The color we change on every level separately. You have to move to that level to make those changes then. Those are the only settings for the layers. You can also turn on and off, of course. But that's also for each level separately. Okay, so this is what it looks like when there's an empty document. Then let's say we insert a wall, and you can see where the different tabs are here, which are added when you insert something. And on the left-hand side, you see you've got only the project one. Do you see the difference now? And Sandeep, the answer to you is every level independent of each other? Yes, all the levels are independent. Only the names are the same in each level. The names and the amounts, that is. Okay, anything else connected to this webinar? If not, I will say farewell, and we shall see you next time, next Tuesday at the same time,